The mountains ruptured the cloud line, extending high into the heavens, strong with wisdom from years and years of growth. The fjords looked down upon the waterways, like the old man on the mountain used to gaze upon the whites of New Hampshire. Finding solitude in a place like this isn't too difficult. Out here, you are the only one who exists for miles upon miles. You've gotten yourself here through struggle and very long days. It has taken quite some time to paddle to the sandy beach you now find yourself sinking your feet into, deep as you can't help but stare out into the ocean blue. The trees cling to the cliffs surrounding you like a mother with her young son's hand in a crowd of people, holding on tight, gripping. Wildlife is everywhere, all around, and the air is just so fresh. As your eyes close, as the end of the day begins, there is just stars and you. Under the big blue sky, the tall trees sheltering you from a light drizzle that slowly begins. This is Patagonia. It was day 3 of a 35-day sea kayaking section, and we were all still novice paddlers. Every one of us was still figuring out how to pack our boats properly, safely, and comfortably. We were completely self-sufficient with our own food, fuel, and gear for the entire expedition, and we were going to end up paddling over 200 nautical miles by the end of it. Through the islands and past the channels that people have never even been before, never gazed sight upon, never dreamt of exploring. Having paddled a few times and feeling pretty comfortable in a canoe, I understood that long days were going to require a lot of focus and determination from me. My expedition team consisted of 4 professional instructors and 16 other young men, filthy as their beards were long, for we had already been 40 days in the backcountry without shaving or showering for that matter. This was our semester abroad. It was our choice to be here. Our group dynamic was interesting, for we knew maybe a little too much about the extent of one another and our ability to perform in the backcountry. On day 3, we experienced something that changed us. Challenged by more than just a long day on the water, day 3 will live within us for a long, long time. I was so hungry as we approached mile 16 on the water. Paddling in the frigid, cold, and windy rain for almost 10 hours was beginning to show its effect on my fatigued body and mind. My grip loosened as I tried to keep paddling, and my eyes began to sink, halfway closed. My stomach growled over the cries the wind bellowed as they blew over the choppy waves. My eyes would gaze to a friend in another boat with concern. I was concerned for the group's spirit, for their health, and for their safety. Were we ready for this? I watched over others' emaciated faces as they too began to weaken, watching as their tired eyes wanted so badly to shut for the day. Underneath their paddling hoods, they managed to keep a slight gaze. We were all done with paddling for that day, and in the moment, what would have seemed like forever. Still on the water, the sky was beginning to blacken over. I could tell the uncertainty of our instructors as they seemed as if we weren't going to make it to our destination. Time was quickly fading, and so was the morale of the expedition. We made a move to cross a canal, which threw significant waves over the decks of our boat, soaking us underneath the already saturated spray skirts, which wrapped us tightly. After a second attempt, and then a third, our instructors made the call, and we all knew we were going to have to camp in a primitive, less than ideal spot for the night. What appeared in my mind was this idea that there were no good camping areas the 15 or so miles it took to get us to the place we now found ourselves in. High fjords ripped vertically out from the ocean, providing rocky cliffs that overhung above us. Some of us were scared. I tried not to be. I was cold just like the person next to me. We managed with little to no light left in the day to pull out onto this swamp that lay beneath a sheared patch of wilderness on the side of one of the fjords. We needed to be efficient and work as creative as possible. People around me began to pass boats up from the water and shove them into trees, branches supporting their hulls and rails as one by one each boat was lifted from the muddy water. They needed to be elevated because the tide was on its way in, and pretty soon we were all going to be up on the hillside. Unpacking our food bags that were shoved 6 at a time into each boat compartment, we had nowhere to put them but on the soaked ground, watching them sink deeper and deeper into the murk and mud. Looking around, we wondered where a tent was going to be pitched, but what we found was that tenting was not an option. At this point, we needed to accept that we were going to be sleeping, or attempting to, in the mud, on the ground, sinking, soaking, hungry, and frail as the hours went deeper into the night. As some of the guys started getting stoves going, others unpacked their bags for them and prepared them atop sleeping pads, dripping wet, filthy with mud, which seemed to now float on the groundwater whose level was quickly rising. Looking for a candy bar to get some fast sugar, I noticed a friend calling out another's name. Parker. No response. Parker. Still nothing. I turned and noticed that one of the skinnier members on our expedition was quickly losing consciousness in the cold rain. His eyes rolled back behind his pale eyelids, his face emaciated and gaunt as he began to fall over from his sitting position. Being a wilderness EMT, I knew I had to spring into action. This is what I love to do. I supported him before his head hit the ground. He wasn't coming to. I demanded people to get anything dry they can, clothes, sleeping bags, and lots of cheese and sugary foods to get his spirits high, once and if he ever came back to us. With our instructors nowhere in sight, we began stripping Parker of his clothes, putting him in different ones, sealed amongst the dry bags that too were now filling up with water. Layers upon layers we pulled over him as quick as we could. His eyes slowly started opening, and he began to fight us, resisting our help, but we needed to get him warmer. Sleeping bags were wrapping him now, and I kept explaining to him that we were helping him. We managed to get him to drink some hot liquids, and then slowly food, and he began doing a little better. He was suffering from a moderate hypothermia after a strenuous day that if we hadn't acted on, could have turned out very badly. We settled him down and watched him in shifts as he dozed off to sleep. I managed to find my sleeping bag, whose color was now more of a brown than a red as I sank into it. I've never felt more wet and cold in my life, but I had good friends all around me. Good people. Still practically on top of each other, sleeping or trying to, or 2 people per 20-inch sleeping bag. And then one guy made a joke of the situation. So focused for so long and so tired, one by one, we soon all managed to start breaking out into laughter. In this cold, dark moment, we found the light. The next morning, I awoke to a bright sun, a lower tide, and a calm ocean, which helped rejuvenate my spirits. This was going to be a new day.